So I just built a $2,000 gaming PC, and to take this bad boy out for a spin, I decided to play Cuphead. Welcome to Achievement Explained, where I'll be breaking down all the achievements Cuphead has to offer while also providing helpful tips and tricks I learned along the way. Nowadays, people will call any difficult game Souls-like, but I do believe that Cuphead embodies what makes those Souls-like games so fun. Getting absolutely stomped, learning and practicing, and ultimately winning just to do it over again. The achievements are pretty comprehensive and cover almost all the game's content without feeling too grindy or tedious. And, almost 5 years after the game first released, a DLC named The Delicious Last Course dropped on June 30th, 2022. Having been announced at E3 in 2018, the pandemic kept pushing back its release date, but I'm glad the developers cared so much about the quality of their game that it took 5 years to release this pretty much 5-hour DLC. Cuphead has 42 achievements, 28 in the base game and 14 in the DLC, though owning both the base game and the DLC allows you to use Miss Chalice and the DLC weapons and charms to get the base game achievements, which does take away from the difficulty this game is known for. So I broke these achievements down into 7 different categories. Let's take a look. There's 7 achievements related to progressing in the base game. Taking names for defeating any boss, walk in the park, a day at the fair, and a trip downtown for defeating every boss in Inkwell Isle 1, 2, and 3. Casino Night for beating King Dice, and Souls Saved for completing the game on normal. You'll get these achievements naturally in your first playthrough, so there isn't much to be said for these. Finally, there's Beat the Devil at his own game for completing the game on Expert. To do this, you'll first need to complete the game on Regular to even unlock Expert difficulty. Expert does make fights a lot harder by adding new shot patterns and more health to each boss, but you'll be able to complete the bosses in any order, so you can always take a break and go to an easier boss if you're having trouble. This is one of the few achievements that actually requires you to play on Expert. A majority of the other achievements can be done on regular or even simple difficulty, which does make your life easier. There's 3 achievements related to parrying. Parry Persistence for parrying 20 times, Parry Performance for 100 times, and Bouncing Ball for parrying 5 times before hitting the ground. These achievements you'll probably get naturally too. For me, the Bouncing Ball achievement popped during Mausoleum 3. I'm not sure how frequently the ghosts line up making this possible, but I've seen that it's also pretty easy to get on Funfair Fever in Inkwell Isle 2 by parrying one of the pink balloons 5 times in a row. There's 3 achievements related to collecting weapons, super arts, and charms. Magician Lord for obtaining all super arts by completing each mausoleum. Coffers Full for getting all 5 coins in each of the 6 run and gun stages. And Butter and Eggman for buying everything in Pork Ryan's shop. Note that if you do own the DLC, you'll also need to buy all the DLC weapons and charms, which will require you to complete the King of Games challenge and find the secret coin in the DLC area. So this is probably the only case where owning the DLC actually makes one of the achievements a little bit harder. And since we're talking about the DLC, there's 3 achievements related to progressing in the DLC. A Vacation in the Wilds for gathering all the ingredients on Inkwell Isle 4 by beating every boss. Compliments to the Chef for beating Chef Saltbaker, the final boss of the DLC, and Checkmate for defeating all of the King of Games champions. Once you enter the DLC, you unlock Miss Chalice. In exchange for sacrificing your charm slot, you get a double jump, a dash that lets you parry, a roll that gives you iframes, and you start with 4 hearts. You're free to enter the DLC as early as Inkwell Isle 1, allowing you to use Miss Chalice for completing the base game. You can also use the coins you get from the King's Leap, the NPC in the town square, and the Miss Chalice tutorial to buy the DLC weapons and charms pretty early on in your journey, since this gives you 15 coins total, the equivalent of getting all the coins in 3 run and gun stages. There's 7 achievements for obtaining ranks on bosses or isles. Sheriff for getting an A rank or higher on all the bosses in Inkwell Isle 1. A- ranks count here too. Boss, Mayor, and Ranger for doing the same in Inkwell Isle 2, 3, and 4. King for doing the same on King Dice and the Devil. And then we have Put on a Show for getting an S rank on any boss, and Cook to Perfection for getting an S rank on Inkwell Isle 4 in particular. So let's first talk about the ranking system. Whenever you beat a boss, you see the results screen that shows you your time, health remaining, parries, supers used, and difficulty. The only thing that difficulty affects is your max rank: S for expert, A+ for regular, and B+ for simple. If you max out each category and your time is under 2 minutes, you'll receive the max rank for your difficulty. However, if you don't, the game weights your number of parries and health remaining the same way. Roughly, for each point you're missing, you'll lose a rank. What I mean by this is you'll go from, let's say, B+ to B. For example, if you're playing on regular and you get hit once and you parry 3 times, you'll get an A rather than an A+. The game places less weight on supers used. If you end with 3 HP and 3 parries, I believe you can miss up to 4 supers and still get an A-. But in practice, it's pretty easy just to get your 6 supers in. Finally, for every roughly 10 seconds past the 2-minute mark, you'll lose a rank. So what does this mean for getting A ranks on bosses? Well, HP and parries are probably the main focus since they're weighted the most. Sometimes this might mean lingering around on a phase of a boss just to get your parries in, like on the dragon fight. Ultimately, knowing the fight well is pretty key for getting A ranks. You should have a good idea of when to go for parries, and learning the patterns will help you not take damage. And so here's where I have a slight problem with the DLC. Miss Chalice has 4 HP, which means you can get hit once and still get an S rank, whereas prior to the DLC, you'd have to beat the boss flawlessly. On top of this, I'd argue that her moveset is better once you get past the initial schlump of learning to play her. And you know what's even better than Miss Chalice? The Heart Ring, which regenerates 1 HP at the 1st, 3rd, and 6th parry. Granted, you don't get a super meter card for these parries, and you also have to execute the parries, but the point is that you can get hit up to 5 times and still potentially get an A rank on a stage. Not to mention that the DLC weapons are stronger than the base games, with Crackshot pretty much being a direct upgrade to Chaser. So I feel like the introduction of the DLC made the base game achievements easier in some ways. In general, I don't really have much of a problem with Miss Chalice being stronger. I found playing her a lot of fun and it made the base game feel like a fresh experience. I just feel like the DLC reduces the difficulty the base game achievements held in the past. But enough ranting. The S rank I'd recommend getting for the base game is Root Pack, which was a pretty obvious choice. For Cooked to Perfection, I actually went with Esther Winchester instead of Howling Aces like most people recommended. I just couldn't wrap my brain around the final phase and I kept getting hit right at the end, so I decided to switch my attempts to Esther using Cuphead with the Heart Ring. There's a lot of good opportunities for parries in this fight, so ending with 3 HP and 3 parries is pretty manageable. Each phase has parry opportunities, but phase 3 with the flying stakes is probably the hardest, so I'd recommend just focusing on damage and dodging then. Phase 4 has a lot of opportunities for parries, so if you get hit then, there's a decent chance you could still clutch the S rank. There are 10 achievements for completing certain challenges. Perfect Run for completing a level without getting hit. This can be pretty easily done on the Root Pack or Goopy Legrand. Ceramic Strike and Porcelain Power for defeating a boss with an EX move and a super art respectively. And there's also the Golden Touch for defeating a boss with one of Miss Chalice's super arts. These just come down to a feel for the boss's health and some good timing. I got these on the Root Pack, but it still took me a good handful of attempts. Alive and Kicking and Decadent require you to kill 10 bosses with Miss Chalice in total. These bosses must be different, but you can play on simple. The latest Sensation requires you to defeat a boss with a DLC weapon. I'd recommend anything but Twist Up, but maybe that's just because I'm bad. Hardy unlocks for having 9 HP at one time. This is a DLC achievement where you can use the new Jimmy's Wish mechanic by walking in a circle on the overworld map 3 times to double your HP for the next boss encounter. The simplest way to get this achievement is to equip the Twin Heart Charm, bringing you to 5 HP, then getting Jimmy's Wish and entering a boss level on regular or simple. A King's Admiration is for beating the King's Gauntlet, where you fight against every chess boss in succession. If you die, you start at the pawns again, and you're given full HP at the start of each fight. I'd recommend doing this as Miss Chalice. I think the King's Leap is more designed around her parry dash rather than the normal parry jump. And finally, the Hi-Hat is rewarded for beating a DLC boss without killing any of its minions. I think the internet consensus seems to be doing this one on Esther Winchester, since there's only one minion you need to avoid killing, and it's only in the first phase. Personally, this is the boss that I did it on, but I know some people have done it on Mortimer Freeze and Glumstone the Giant. Finally, there are 9 hidden achievements, 2 of which belong to the DLC. Cutting Corners unlocks for finding a shortcut. There's one in each area. Selling Out and Swing You Sinner are for giving in to the devil and defeating the devil respectively. High Roller is for getting every coin in the game. There are 56 coins, 40 in the base game and 16 in the DLC. So if you have the DLC installed, you'll need to get all of these. Pacifist unlocks for getting a P rank on all 6 levels. The only criteria for getting this is not killing any enemies. The parries and health remaining do not matter. In my opinion, the most difficult run and gun level for this is Funhouse Frazzle. The tubos and walls are pretty difficult to get by without destroying them, especially the last wall. There's like a specific timing window you have to hit for your jump and dash, which I struggled with a lot. Bravo Zulu P26 for defeating a boss using only the small plane's bullets. You can sort of cheese this achievement by fighting Fear Lap, which is number 6 on King Dice, instead of one of the regular plane bosses. Rolling Sixes is for defeating King Dice while having 3 or more HP. And yes, I know the achievement says without taking a hit, but the achievement should proc if you end the fight while having 3 or more HP, even if you'd already taken a hit. I'm not sure if this achievement is just unclear in its wording or if it's bugged, but with the heart ring you can heal up to 3 times and also still make use of the hearts in the King Dice roulette wheel, so this one shouldn't be too bad. And now for the hidden DLC achievements, we have A Horrible Night to Have a Curse, where you have to beat the angel and demon that switch places every time you turn around. To fight this boss, you'll have to solve the riddle given by the ghost detective next to the graveyard. I won't spoil it here in case you want to solve it yourself. The follow-up to this achievement is Paladin for turning the Broken Relic into the Divine Relic. The Broken Relic can be bought in the shop for 1 coin, and in this stage, it does literally nothing. After defeating the Angel and Demon, it turns into the Cursed Relic, where whenever you defeat bosses, you'll receive points according to this table. Every 4 points, you upgrade your relic to improve these abilities until you reach 16 points, at which it turns into the Divine Relic. So what's the catch here? Well, the Cursed Relic makes you start with 1 HP, and on top of this, every time you press the fire button, use a super, or dash, your weapon is randomized. Upgrading to the Divine Relic by reaching 16 points removes the 1 HP effect, but your weapons are still randomized upon firing. This is a neat one because you have a lot of choice in how you want to complete it. The strategy I followed was completing a few bosses that I felt were easiest from each aisle, and then finishing up with the Devil for 4 points. Plane levels are good for this one since the weapon switching effect is minimized, but I didn't do many because I think most of them are harder than regular bosses. Online estimates say getting all the achievements takes around 23 to 28 hours of play, so if you haven't come back to Cuphead since the DLC dropped, I'd recommend giving it another shot. The DLC makes getting the achievements easier, and there isn't a single achievement that I can think of that was annoying or poorly designed. Comment down below what you thought of the format, and let me know if you'd like to see me cover any other games. Thanks for watching.